Hello, good evening, everybody. Thanks very much for coming. My name is Teresa Burns and I'm Project Coordinator for Action for ME. And I'm really pleased to introduce you to Gail Ross, MSP. Thanks very much for hosting this evening. I hope that you enjoy tonight and have the opportunity to ask all the questions and do all the networking that you want to get out this evening. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Hello and welcome to your Scottish Parliament. My name is Gail Ross and I'm the MSP for Caithness, Sutherland and Ross. And it's my pleasure to sponsor tonight's event, which celebrates and raises awareness for ME Awareness Week. And I'm very grateful that we are also joined here tonight by a panel including people with ME, members of their families and health professionals. We are also joined by representatives of the charity for Action for ME who have kindly organised tonight's event, and thank you to Teresa. Also, thank you to everyone else that have made this event possible, and especially to people that have come along tonight that suffer from ME. It's very important for us to hear directly from those with lived experience. And this is something that we're having to do more and more often now. If you want to tweet, there's a hashtag, and the hashtag is #ThisIsME with no punctuation. Last May, I held a debate in the Chamber of the Scottish Parliament to mark International ME Awareness Day, where we discussed some of the Action for ME's proposals. And I'm very pleased that as a Parliament, we are continuing that discussion this year as well. And we're here tonight to highlight the experiences which often go unnoticed because, as many of you will know, many of those that suffer with ME do so privately and behind closed doors. Before I pass over to our panel, who will, as I say, discuss their first-hand experiences, I want to just give some background for tonight's discussion. As our panel will highlight, there is no cure for ME, and life experiences of those with the affliction can vary immensely, and no two experiences are exactly the same. For example, some of those that were invited along here tonight unfortunately couldn't make it, so we say hello to them in their absence. When I made my speech last year, I did it because, well, I was prompted to do it because a close friend of mine suffers from ME, and she had hoped to attend the event in the Scottish Parliament as well. But when it came to the day, we're from Caithness, as you can tell from my accent, and it's nearly 300 miles for her to travel, so she was unable to make it because she was too unwell. And although every ME experience is unique, there are some common themes. Life-changing symptoms can leave those affected without jobs, isolated from friends, and unable to lead their former lives, as my friend Sally will attest to. And many sufferers also have difficulty accessing benefits. And I'm very proud to say that the Scottish Government's social security system, when it's introduced, will prioritise the needs of the person and put dignity at its heart. And in response to my debate last year, the Minister for Public Health and Sport, Aileen Campbell, who unfortunately could not be with us tonight, but she sends her best, stated that for those with long-term conditions such as ME, we will introduce long-term awards, and wherever possible, assessments for those awards will be paper-based rather than face-to-face. We will stop the revolving door of assessments that have caused so much stress and anxiety, and which certainly do not do any good for people who suffer from conditions that are exacerbated by stress and anxiety. Research is also a crucial factor in improving the lives of those with ME, and I was glad to see in February that the Scottish Government and Action for ME are providing £90,000 of new funding to support research into the cause, diagnosis and treatment. This money will be used to allow a Scottish university to host a new PhD studentship focused on improving understanding. And this continues the Scottish Government and Action for ME's collaboration, which last year saw Action for ME receive £300,000 from the Scottish Government's Transforming Self-Management Fund. We do a lot, but you'll all know we can and have to do so much more. And we must keep finding ways to improve the experience of those with ME, and we must keep pushing to transform and improve care. And I'm happy to say that the Scottish Government does share this view. But the best way to inform change is by listening to those who actually live with the experience, and that's what we will do for the next section of this evening. We will hear a number of different perspectives on living with ME and its treatments before opening up the discussion to the room for questions and comments. And I just want to say, these speakers are very brave speakers, and I want to thank them before they come up for coming and telling us about their individual stories. I also want to point out some MSPs in the room. We have Emma Harper. Put your hand up, so that you know who to lobby and who to go and chat to afterwards. We've got Finlay Carson, and we also had Gordon Lyndhurst and Alexander Burnett, who had to leave us, and there may well be others joining us over the course of the evening who will make themselves known to you. So thank you all for coming. I hope you find this of benefit to you, and I would like to start by handing over to Carl Berwick, whose daughter is a young woman who has had ME since childhood, and Carl is also a volunteer mentor with Mentor ME. Thank you.
Good evening. This is my family's ME story and some of the lessons that could hopefully be learned from it. Our association with ME CFS began on the 1st of March 2005, when my daughter, Ailey, then 9, became ill with a severe flu-like virus. She had always been a sickly child, and after this latest virus followed many visits to the GP. During one visit, the GP decided to test fatigue for herself and told Ailey to run around outside of the building 4 times. She would watch from her window. Ailey passed the window once and then did not reappear. She had collapsed and was extremely upset. She was escorted into the building by the GP, encouraging her to keep running and referred to paediatrics the next day. Ailey's health problems continued, and after 6 months, CFS was diagnosed. Treatment? She will be better in 6 months. Go and see a psychologist and a physio. Ailey was sent to the local gym to work with cardiac patients, the cardiac patients performing significantly better than Ailey. 2 years later, Ailey became unable to walk and was admitted to hospital for intensive physio and psychology. During that time, the psychologist shouted at Ailey to tell her why she was not walking, and we were repeatedly told by this person that Ailey does not want to get better. When I mentioned CFS to her, she said that her remit was only Ailey's mental health. Physio sessions consisted of Ailey being held up by a belt loop and walked up and down corridors like a puppet. The paediatrician constantly showed frustration when Ailey dipped and wobbled with complete exhaustion when walking, and at one point admitted she had not expected the CFS to be such an issue. Ailey was discharged after 6 weeks, and she was to go back to school for 1 period per day. The physio took her the first day, but would not allow her to take her wheelchair, as it was less embarrassing. Her words, certainly not mine, to use a portable 3-legged stool when Ailey needed a rest from being walked with a harness around her waist. She still could not walk unsupported. The next day, Ailey crashed and could not lift a spoon to eat breakfast. She has still not recovered to the level she was at before being admitted to hospital almost 11 years ago. Ailey was left to recover for a while, leaving us with absolutely no support. After some time, arriving for an outpatient appointment, however, the paediatrician asked to speak to Ailey alone and spent 20 minutes shouting such things as, "This is nonsense, you will walk within a month or else." When they came out of the room, Ailey was inconsolable and the paediatrician was shaking with rage. They were proposing intensive physio for a month, and we had to go along with it. After 2 days, Ailey crashed again. Of course, it was not their treatment, but Ailey putting up barriers and not wanting to get better? Or was it that neurotic mother? Ailey regressed further, and by summer 2009, she was in a state of constant dizziness, unable to dress herself, and we were giving her bed baths. Paediatrician's response? So what if she gets dizzy? She should be admitted to a psychiatric unit in Great Ormond Street. I obviously did not agree with this, and she replied, "Are you refusing treatment?" Again, I had to go along with things. Thankfully, Great Ormond Street did not want us, and we were referred to CAMS, where Ailey was an outpatient. As we parted company with the paediatrician, I vowed this must never happen to another family. After a year, Ailey had regressed again after being treated with graded exposure therapy for phobias. We were discharged. At this point, we were back under the care of the GP. Our story highlights a lack of education and awareness of ME CFS at every turn. The poor treatment by the healthcare professionals was not pre-planned, but demonstrates ignorance about ME CFS and appropriate treatment. The impact of ME CFS has been huge. Ailey has had virtually no education since late primary, has had no teenage social life, and little prospect at the moment of gaining any independence. I lost my teaching career, and my health suffered due to stress. I have come a long way, and now wish to ensure this will never happen to another family. I would like to give the last word to Ailey, with us this evening, who described her ME experience saying, "No healthcare professional believed me, and they said my illness was in my head. I was made to feel like a criminal." This should not be happening. We need more education and awareness for health professionals and, from our experience, for the care of children and young people. Thank you.
Hi, thanks Carol. I think you did really well. Hi everybody. I was going to start with a show of hands, so hopefully you're okay for putting your hands up, to those of you. How many of you on the floor have ME? Okay, well done for getting here, guys. Well done, it's appreciated. How many of you know someone close to you with ME? That's a lot as well. Of those of you who have ME, how many of you have been seen by more than one different service in your lifetime? It's quite a few different services. Any of you seen a nursing service? Great. Just teasing. Now I'm going to do a PowerPoint presentation. So those of you who don't like PowerPoint presentations, it's only 5 minutes, I promise. And I've been given power here, so hopefully I'm able to work it. No, I've turned it off. Right, 4 buttons and it took me 4 goes, eh? The other good thing about using a PowerPoint is that you can look at this, you don't have to look at me. I've been nursing ME, chronic fatigue syndrome, post-viral illnesses and NHS 5 for the last 14 years. And unfortunately, it's still the only nurse-led service for ME in the country. And this is a wee bit about what I do, and hopefully you're able to take some useful experiences. And for the MSPs around, hopefully you can lobby your local health boards. We'll start off with the definition. To those of you who have ME, you will know exactly what this is. To those of you who are unfamiliar with it, I use this definition because the World Health Organization recognise it. I also use this definition because the UK government accept the World Health Organization definition. To give a brief overview, again for people who are familiar with the condition, which is the majority of you, you probably won't be able to see this, I'm sorry it's a bit grainy, but it highlights that ME has so many different features. It's variable, it's chaotic, it's unpredictable, the goalposts move from day to day, and it's very, very difficult to manage. You've been given the hardest job and the hardest condition to cope with. But I wanted to do another wee bit of a quiz. You don't have to shout out the answer, that would just be silly. But what is the prevalence of ME in this country? 1 in 20, 1 in 200, 1 in 500, 1 in 5,000, or 1 in 10,000? So think, have you picked? I want you picked. If you picked 1 in 200, you were right. How many of you picked 1 in 200? Be honest. Right. Okay. Out of interest, 1 in 20 is the number of sufferers of chronic respiratory conditions in the UK. 1 in 500 is the number of people with MS in the UK. 1 in 5,000 is the number of people with celiac disease. And 1 in 10,000 is the people with a positive Huntington's diagnosis. Again, a short summary. ME is a severely debilitating and life-limiting disease. We now know recently, and if any of you have watched the BBC websites, you'll know that it is also a life-taking disease. It cannot be underestimated how awful a condition and how serious this can be. Mentioning a few symptoms like chronic fatigue just doesn't do it justice. It's a neurological condition. Some of you may have been seen by neurology, some have been seen by neurology and other specialties. But it's real and it's physical. What I've been doing is been in post after a lot of work was done before I was put in this role. There were surveys that were done way back in 1997. Now, it doesn't mean that every ME nurse post has to do years and years of research. This was a scoping exercise where a doctor said, how many people have this condition in NHS 5? Oh, that's a lot. I think we need a service. And that's where it began. Part of my job was to make sure that people were using modern definitions and diagnostic criteria for the condition. The old yuppie flu idea, where you're a wee bit tired and should be better in 6 months, as Cara was told and Ailey was told, is just simply not true. So I'll go to GP practices and try and train them and bring them up to date and drag them into the 21st century. So I began my clinics in 2004. The number of referrals has gone up and up. I receive about 20 a month, and that's been continuing. And I've been using nursing models to try and apply treatment plans and assist people in living and in management. But a lot of it is coordinating the role and educating other health professionals. So I have to build a nursing approach for ME/CFS. I will stick to my 5 minutes, I promise. Loads of surveys and questionnaires have been done, not just for the patients, but those who have people close to them, and to a lot of health professionals. And I got a few results back in. The aims with the service was obviously to deliver a nursing management approach for the condition, work with other health professionals, as I mentioned, and try and lead and educate others to try and produce a better overall experience for people with this condition. So I did some evaluations in the summaries. Now, sorry, I'm going to do a bit of a Diane Abbott with loads of different percentages here, but I was just wanting you to see some of these. 71% said they found the service very useful. 25% also said it was quite useful, and one person didn't really find it helpful at all. Out of 96% who say that a service is useful, I'd say that's quite positive. 93% said that life was more manageable. And really that was the approach, is to nurse people to manage the condition so it influences their life less. It can be done by a number of different ways, some more simple than others, most of it very complicated. But 83% found that their symptoms were affecting them less. And again, these were just nursing approaches, coordinating care and educating others who were assisting them to try and combine all of the help that was out there that a person could get. But it wasn't perfect. There was still a lot to improve on. 32% said they didn't have any more energy. So that's a third. It doesn't cure ME. Nursing was never supposed to cure ME. Nothing's curing ME at the moment. So it's still there. This was a way to try and manage the effects. But 76%, 3/4, had friends and family who noticed that it did improve things for them. So again, these were very good news. And for the one person who reported a complete improvement, I couldn't be happier. So in summary, the ME/CFS nurse service is helpful. It made a difference to these people. And I had some positive comments here as well. Now, I didn't put the comment up because it was about me in particular, but this was saying that they had a condition that no one understood. And there was a service there where finally they didn't have to fight to be believed. And I want that to highlight that an ME CFS service, wherever it was placed, automatically says, we believe you. I wanted to do a short case history, and this will be me wrapping up. Here's someone who's 37-year-old, a woman, very fit and active, intelligent, academic, and obviously she's a high-functioning, high-achieving person. She had loads of different symptoms, and to those of you who got ME, you'll know some of these are familiar. But again, putting the words on the page doesn't emphasise how serious they are. This person was completely bedbound, bedridden. Her life was foreshortened. The diagnosis revealed that she had a brucellosis infection. For those of you that are unfamiliar with it, it's a horrible zoonosis that you catch from infected meat and infected milk products. The treatment now is tons of antibiotics, but the effects last a very long time. And this is Florence Nightingale, the first nurse. And now we have the first nurse who contracted ME, and we have one nurse 200 years later. And I don't think that's good enough. If we have more pandas than ME nurses, then I'm a rarer creature than a panda. So what if she knew that there was only one nurse in all the years that she had this condition? Wonder what she would say. The current situation in Fife is that it continue to try and adapt models of nursing care to try and improve the service, continue to educate, advise and guide other health professionals. Because on my own I can't do very much, but the wider I cast my net, the more people know about ME/CFS and the modern methods of management. They want to ensure that cases like Ailey's and cases like many other people are not made worse out of ignorance. There's no excuse. So my hope is that nursing becomes recognised within many other specialties and mainstream services. And I hope we can still do what perhaps Florence Nightingale was wanting way back then. And thank you very much.
I'm going to introduce somebody called Carlin Menzies, who wanted to be here tonight. She lives in Grampian and she's had the condition for 11 years. So she sent this recording. Bear with me.
I've been living with chronic illness for 11 years now, and I've been asked to explain to you what the biggest challenges of that have been. For me, getting a diagnosis and getting any kind of medical support has been the biggest challenge and the biggest problem. It's very hard for young women especially to get a diagnosis when they have a complicated condition, because there's this automatic assumption that we are suffering stress or anxiety. It is a lazy diagnosis given by GPs or doctors who don't know what the problem is, and instead of admitting they don't know what the problem is and treating the patient symptomatically, they go, it's a young woman, it'll be stress, and they send us away offers antidepressants. Now, if a young woman or anyone is so ill that a doctor feels that they are making themselves suffer physical symptoms because of a mental illness, they should be offered psychological help or counselling of some kind to at least determine if it's a likely diagnosis. That's never happened for me, and for many other people I've discussed it with. No one was ever offered mental health support. They were just, you're stressed, you're anxious, have some antidepressants and go away, get out of my office. This is completely unacceptable, and it causes absolute anguish for those of us who are already suffering enough. Our lives have been turned upside down, and we need support. We don't need to be told, basically, it's all your own fault, which is how we generally internalise that. And it adds to the badness that we're already feeling. So what do we need to make life better? Respect, recognition. We need a doctor to say, okay, I might not understand what's going on with you, but I'm going to help you as best I can. That's what we need. And we need the government to recognise that what we have is a real condition, it causes real suffering and it ruins our lives. Because only when that starts to happen, when the doctors and the government accept it, only then will we really be able to accept that we shouldn't kick ourselves and blame ourselves for the illnesses that we're suffering. And we can't heal until we stop blaming ourselves and until people support us a little bit. So I would really like to see those changes happen. Thank you. I've been living with chronic illness for 11 years.
Hello, my name's Katie Davis. I'm an occupational therapist working in NHS Grampian. I've worked as an OT for the past 25 years in hospitals, a palliative care unit, and I'm now working in community rehab. So I can only speak on behalf of the service that I work in Aberdeenshire. I've treated many patients with a variety of long-term conditions for whom fatigue is a problem. About 10 years ago, I received my first referral for a client with ME/CFS, who'd been diagnosed by a consultant whose only advice to her was, rest completely, and then when you feel better, pace yourself. Up until then, I'd heard of ME, but knew very little about it. It was not a condition that I learnt about during my OT training. I discovered that at that time, it was mainly CBT-trained occupational therapists or physios working in mental health units that had experience in treating ME. And so there was little support or supervision available for me within my team. So I spent time researching the internet, reading about the management and treatment of ME, and soon realised that actually I had the skills in teaching clients about pacing, activity management, goal setting, the effects of stress, the benefits of relaxation, etc. I know how to teach this in much more detail to my client with ME, helping her establish a baseline so that she was able to balance rest and activity. I continued to work with her for quite a number of months, in fact, probably almost a year. I read about specialist services and fatigue clinics that happened in England and discovered that one in Yorkshire was led by a consultant occupational therapist who also ran a fatigue masterclass in London. I asked my manager if I could attend. I knew there was no training budget, but she gave me 2 days off work to attend the course. I paid for it myself, stayed with family in London, used my Tesco club card vouchers for the flights to and from Aberdeen. It was well spent. Now I was feeling much more confident in my role working with people with ME. I hoped to be able to help more clients. However, over the past 10 years, only a very small percentage of the clients referred to me have an ME diagnosis. I've worked with some people who have experienced persistent fatigue and other symptoms associated with ME, but are still waiting for the diagnosis. I know how frustrated they feel. They're relieved to know that the test results come back negative, but frustrated at not being believed, sometimes being given a diagnosis of medically unexplained symptoms or a prescription for antidepressants. Often they say that I'm the first person that's actually sat and listened to their story. I've spoken with a number of GPs across the 5 practices I cover across rural Aberdeenshire and found that sadly one does not regard ME as a long-term condition and wouldn't consider it as a diagnosis. Some GPs do feel confident making a diagnosis, while others do but prefer to have it confirmed by specialists working in secondary care, and only a few are reasonably confident diagnosing ME. None of the GPs I spoke to were aware of the Managing ME/CFS, a guide for GPs in Scotland. Some of the clients I've worked with have been referred to me by physio colleagues who've been asked to provide graded exercise therapy according to NICE guidelines, but this is often inappropriate for these clients. They've possibly already waited at least 3 months for a physio appointment, so by the time I see them, they are really struggling with fatigue and have been for such a long time and quite entrenched often in the boom and bust cycle. One of the other challenges I face is that covering such a large geographical area, it can take me a long time to get to a client's house. I had one lady who lived an hour away, so it was an hour there for a 15 to 20 minute session and an hour back. She'd been referred for cognitive behavioural therapy, but was expected to travel a 120-mile round trip to Aberdeen for this. Needless to say, she was unable to attempt the journey, but when I discussed it with her GP, he said, she's a non-attender. I recently asked my physio and OT colleagues working in community rehab teams across Aberdeenshire if they worked with anyone with ME/CFS, if they would feel confident working with anyone with ME, and if they had received any specific training on ME. The majority of staff replied saying no to all 3 questions. It is therefore clear to me, and probably many of you in this room, that there is a need for ME to be included in the syllabus for all health and social care courses at universities and colleges. for an accredited CPT training course, for links on websites such as NES and NHS Inform, and for more specialist services and a lot more Keiths across the whole of Scotland. Thank you.